I made you another board. But this time, we're not just going to peel back the curtain on the marketing plan for the genocide. What we're going to do is we're just going to crack the whole thing wide open. It's come to light that over the last 2 weeks, the pro-genocide marketing team has spent $7.1 million on paid ads alone. In the last video, we talked about how every single good marketing campaign splits its audience into people who are pro-you, neutral to you, and anti-you, whoever you are. And we figured out that for a genocide to go ahead, all we need is the neutral people to stay neutral, because if that happens, we have got the majority. That's all we need. So we're only going to target these people with our messaging. So the $7.1 million is solely being spent on these neutral people. Okay, so we need to figure out who they are and how they're saying what they're saying to them. So let's get started. Who are the people who are neutral? They are people who, by definition and design, are unaffected by politics. That's who we're talking to. For you to be unaffected by the politics in the West, we're talking specifically, tend to have enough money to never rely on what the outcomes of the politics is, enough status to impact it if it does offend you, and then by virtue of those two things, you tend to be white and older. Or the other way you can get there is you can be a person of color with enough money to get out of the situation where politics does impact you. This admittedly is a smaller population in the unaffected by politics group, but it's still part of the group. One of the most impactful ways to get people to act, not act, do whatever you want, is lean into their fears. We're just going to kind of backtrack and figure out their fears based on what it is they have, based on who they are. So here's what they've got. By definition of not being affected by politics, they tend to have three things: money, status, and some kind of power. There's usually ways that you can accumulate these kinds of money. Typically speaking, it's jobs for money, but you can also inherit it. But we're just going to kind of go with job, right? Connections to get any kind of status, and connections obviously rely on people. That's how you get your status. And then any kind of power is usually built on your reputation, right? These two things are a little bit interlinked, but we can assume that's how you get these things, right? Some kind of way to get the money, some kind of connections to give you the status, and some kind of reputation to build your power. So based on those things and knowing that you have those things, I can tell you what your fears are. And I can do that with confidence because you've spent time accumulating this stuff. If that's what you've spent your time doing, I know for a Fendi fact, that's what you care about. So because that's what you care about losing it. Okay, so that's what we're going to go with. These are your fears. Your fears, first and foremost, would be upsetting your colleagues. Anything that puts your job or way of getting the income that gives you this money, anything that puts that in jeopardy is a big fear, right? Then is we're really afraid of saying the wrong thing. By virtue of saying the wrong thing, you're going to lose one of your connections, which would put your status in jeopardy. You're not going to want to do it. It would make you deathly afraid. It's kind of the same thing as upsetting a colleague, but a little bit wider, right? Because maybe you're not going to get the next job. Maybe that makes you a black sheep in your industry. All of this stuff has weight because you've put weight to it. And then the last thing is you don't want to offend or look foolish, because these things can put your reputation in danger. Why is this important? Because if I can convince you that your silence puts any of these in jeopardy, we're in business, okay? So here's exactly how I'm going to do that. Okay, so first and foremost, what we're going to do is we're going to tell you that all protesters or pro-Palestine people are troublemakers. And by virtue of that, you're not going to want to upset people. That's not what you're about. I don't want to be a troublemaker. But if everyone paints the people who are pro-Palestine as troublemakers, you're going to be like, that's not me. I don't want to offend my colleagues. I need them. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to do. Then we're going to tell you that both sides are equal. We're going to be like, well, then I don't want to say the wrong thing to the people in my network, because if both sides are equal and both sides are equally in the right and the wrong, I don't want to say the wrong thing to someone in my network and then put where I am in my social circle in jeopardy, because again, you've put weight on being there. And then the last thing that we're going to tell you is that this is a complex issue. If I tell you this is a complex issue and you don't have time to look it up because it's slightly inconvenient for you to do so, then you don't want to offend and look foolish, because then that could put your power at risk, right? People might think you're silly and the amount of stuff you've accumulated, you're not worth it. And that would be detrimental to your self-image and then therefore your image in the future. Okay? So that's how they got to this stuff. And that's how this stuff makes you stay silent. It's kind of genius.